Hi, boys and girls. This is the story Paul Bunyan and the Great Lakes. It's retold by Don Abrahamson. I'm going to go to the thinking questions really quick. So we're going to fast forward. And I want to read the first one to you. It says, "This is a legend. This story is a legend. Legends are stories that people tell from generation to generation until someone writes it down. That means they use their voice to tell it. So they may have told it long ago around campfires. They may have told this story as a bedtime story to their children. But it was not in a book. They told it with their voice. So usually legends are based on truth, but you'll hear very shortly that even though they're based on truth, the story is actually fiction. The setting is usually a real place, and today we're going to be talking about the Great Lakes, but the hero in the story can do greater than life actions. So I want you to think as we read, what details from this story make it a legend? All right, let's go back to the beginning. Paul Bunyan and the Great Lakes, retold by Don Abrahamson. The first thing most people notice about Paul Bunyan was that he was big. Now, when I say big, I mean huge, gigantic. Everything he did big. He could walk a mile just by taking a few steps. His clothes had to be specially made. Of course, 20 tailors had to sew together the canvas sails from 5 or 6 sailing ships to make just one of his shirts. The second thing people noticed was that he was usually accompanied by his pet ox, Babe. Babe was big too. He had to be to keep up with Paul. Babe was as strong as he was big. Paul could hitch Babe up to one of the winding, curving roads, and Babe could pull it straight. Oh, and did I mention that Babe was bright blue? Babe wasn't just a pet. He was a working animal. That was useful because Paul was a lumberjack. Paul decided to hire a crew of lumberjacks. He had to build a lumber camp to give his crew a place to live. He found a nice spot and set the men building using lumber they had cut down themselves. A camp needed a good supply of drinking water, so Paul dug out a huge reservoir to catch rainwater and to hold water from a number of rivers that emptied into it. People called it Lake Ontario. After some Native American words, that means Great Lake. That worked fine for a while, but Babe could drink half the lake himself every morning before breakfast. So Paul dug another reservoir, and then another. They were also given Native American names, Lake Erie and Lake Huron. Paul's lumber camp was growing too, and he had more men and more animals than ever before. So he dug Lake Michigan and then finally Lake Superior. Now he had a really good water supply. As I said, Paul did everything big. All right. So boys and girls, did you hear anything that makes this story a legend? Well, of course. First of all, they said Paul was so big, it took 5 to 6 sails from a ship just to make his shirt. So really, he was a giant. And then it says that he himself actually dug holes to make the Great Lakes. And we know that is not true. And then last, Babe the blue ox, he was just as big, and we know that an oxen is not that big. but he was so big that if a road was crooked, the Babe the Blue Ox would pull it straight. All of those details make this a legend and also make this story fiction. What's the setting of this legend? Well, yes, long ago, Michigan was all woods. There were no cities. So it is set in Michigan, and he dug the Great Lakes all around him. We already said that the Great Lakes in this story were made by Paul because he dug holes. What's the theme of the story? What do you think? I think the theme is how the Great Lakes came to be, right? It's telling about nature. I want you to think about our story this week, hottest, coldest, highest, deepest. What was one interesting fact that you read about that place, about a place on earth and there? That story was full of facts, wasn't it? How is that story, hottest, coldest, highest, deepest, and this legend about Paul Bunyan similar? I remember in hottest, coldest, highest, deepest, they talked about Lake Superior. Well, in this story, Paul Bunyan actually dug Lake Superior. We know that's not true because it's a legend, right? Hottest, coldest, highest, deepest is full of facts, and it's nonfiction. Whereas Paul Bunyan, the story of Paul Bunyan making the Great Lakes is a legend, and it is most definitely fiction. There's a lot of exaggeration in this story. I want you, when you are done, you're going to choose one feature from the story hottest, coldest, highest, deepest. And I want you to make up a short story in which Paul Bunyan makes that amazing feature of that setting. So what are you going to choose? Are you going to choose a mountain, a river, a lake, a desert? I don't know. It's a made-up story, boys and girls. So you're going to take a real feature from hottest, coldest, highest, deepest, and you're going to turn it into a legend by adding some fiction. And your theme is going to be how that feature was made. Use your imaginations. There's no wrong answer. I can't wait to read your stories. Happy writing!